Alright, PlayStation Repair Augusta back again doing the final follow-up video for a PS4 that has 3 other parts. This is actually part 4 of 4, and it is now finally fully resolved. Last repair, to do a quick recap, let's just start from the beginning. And probably before I get too far into this, I should check, and yes, we are good there. We have video coming in, and I see that audio is pulsing through on OBS. So I'm going to assume that we're good on audio. I think so far that's proven to be a valid confirmation without having to go and open up that video and hear the sound directly. Now, to recap, this originally came in as a surge, transient, lightning, whatever you want to call it. Struck, blew out HDMI. We went through, did the repair on that. The customer then took it back, and maybe I missed it, maybe I checked it and just it gave a false indication that it was okay. At this point, not really sure, but the customer got it back home and realized that the Ethernet was out. And although it's not always common for those two issues to go together in a surge/transient event, they do happen, and it is common enough that it is something I usually check for. For whatever reason, it was missed on this one, so customer brought it back, and that repair was done just for the difference in cost for a single versus a dual. Then when that was put back together after that, it now no longer would power on. We got a light, a beep, and an instant off, and that is not good. That is a no-go. At that point, your console is a brick. So we had to figure out that issue, and instantly I knew that the area we were working in was very close to the South Bridge, so my suspicion was that. And what we are doing now is just we're going to open this up. We're going to verify that it is in fact the same board because it has the signature on it. Then we're going to get off the demo paste, or trial and error paste as I like to call it, because we're just putting something down there in case we have to scrape it right back off, and we're going to put good paste on, reassemble it, and then through the feed we're going to hook it up and actually make it run just to verify that it is a fully functioning board at this stage. And sure enough, like always, I get everything I think the way I need it, and we get to the point of starting the video, and then I realize I've moved a tool. And I don't know why I would have moved this tool. It is a screwdriver designated specifically for this desk. And I've been cleaning as I go. And just getting messages from customers, so making sure I'm being responsive. Alright, so screwdriver, where did you go? Where did you disappear to? That's fine. We're not going to slow this video down looking for one. Oh, already found it. I moved it to the side bench where my 3D printer was. Shame on me for not keeping them separate, because I said I was going to do that from now on. Alright, so again, just doing a quick disassembly here, and we're not tearing this down all the way. There was another video that was done to cover that purpose. Put these over here with the other screws, and yeah, we didn't put any other screws back on there when we were just trying it out. And if you're going to be testing a machine middle of repair, I recommend not fully reassembling your unit, just because just because you need to be able to, well, it's more convenient. That's a better way to put it. I lost my train of thought there because my phone is going nuts right now. Okay, so here's the name, same as we've done before, with the ticket number 4282. For those of you that have followed the other videos and remember that number, that is confirmation that this is the same machine. Now what we need to do is clean this up. I'm going to stick this off to the side, and then we are going to, time to pull out another box of those specialty tools. And there's our specialty tools, some Equate cotton swabs. We should have enough to get us through here. Alright, so we're just going through and we're going to dig out this trough of, because we're running low, I'm just going to pull this off. I've got a whole nother box, I just don't want to take a break in the video just to go and grab that box. And because I source these locally, I'm not ordering some specialty swab from a repair supplier, which they do sell swabs specifically for this at an outrageous price. I'm able to just, whenever I open a box, I make sure I buy another one, and that's a benefit. So if you're doing this even just for your scheduled maintenance of your consoles or your computers, Q-tips, isopropyl, or if you want to get real fancy, there's a Arctic Clean Solution 1 and 2, which I'm not sure where 1 is. It goes to show how often I use the fancy version. You know, some purists would say, oh no, you shouldn't use cotton swabs. I have done this for years and never had an issue. So to anyone that says it doesn't work, you're crazy. And looking for where I stuck a mound of 2032 battery cells, which, by the way, these are 2032 battery cells. I have one here, but the rest of the stack just got knocked over by a vacuum hose. Let's move those so that they don't get connected to something they shouldn't be. And normally I wrap these in masking tape just to isolate them, and then I wrap them in a stack on top of each other like this. Low tech, but it does exactly what it needs to, and it keeps them nice, neat, and organized. So we slap the battery back in there. We go to our next step. In fact, let's go ahead and let's talk about what happened here. That we should do before we do the reassembly. So we have it clean so that we're not going to get this stuff all over ourselves like I've done. What we don't want to do is spread this stuff around on the circuit board. Okay, so grab some tweezers here just so that we can get some precision. Alright, this here is our south bridge. The south bridge kind of acts like an intermediary connection between peripherals and the APU. It's a communication hub, so to speak. So things like power and data often go from devices, like here we have Ethernet, it goes into the controller, and then from the controller there may be some direct contacts into the APU, but I believe on this model most of our connections go directly into the south bridge here. And what happened is, as we were heating up and working with this, actually two things happened. One, I think we had some board flex, which caused connections to separate. and then 2, some stray solder, or potentially when we tore apart that Ethernet controller to show everything that was inside of it, a wire may have come loose and slid up underneath enough so that it created a bridge. You couldn't see that bridge because, well, you couldn't see a wire making the bridge, because at that point what will happen is once it gets heated up, the solder is going to rush into that wire and form a solid joint. So either solder blew directly in and formed a bridge, or a wire from that teardown of that Ethernet, which normally isn't something you would do unless you're trying to diagnose and figure out exactly what's going on, which is what we were doing. So those extra pieces may have caused our issue, but there was definitely also some board flex, because we had to use what, and let's take an opportunity to show this. I bought this a while ago. It's a nice tool. It's not exactly what I was hoping for, especially in the price point. This was over $100. It could have been a little thicker for that price, and it could have been at least certainly more true. And the major mistake, and I'm normally not a ummer, but for some reason today I am, probably because I'm trying to speed through. So let's see if I can stop those ums. All right, so the big problem, and maybe that's why it needs to be thicker, is because this particular manufacturer was being ingenious in the fact that they wanted to make a multi-purpose tool. This actually handles several different style of boards. As you can see, the peg sticking up, I think, plus 2 others go to secure the PS4 in this configuration. It doesn't do any of the other configurations, because at the time there was just this and the PS3. So it works with this configuration and some PS3 Slim configurations. But because of that, the maker of it decided to separate this channel here. And in fact, they probably should have left it about right here, because in between here, we want to keep it open because it meshes up with that APU. And we just want to make sure that it's not blocking. In fact, this is the way that it should be, just like that. So you see these line up with the holes underneath, and there's a nice clear opening down below, because this would be under it, not over it. And that allows the heat to come through, but this is supposed to keep the board stiff. But because, in fact, this one here could have been straight across, because all the center support has been taken out, there's not enough interconnectivity to hold this post rigid as it gets heated up, because that board, when it gets so hot, it wants to flex. And you have to get these hot to remove these chips. So it doesn't flex much, and it flexed to a degree of tolerance that it's okay, but it could have been a little more solid. So I've started designing my own. The problem is getting confirmation of design before you go to machining, because machining is not cheap. I've gotten quotes anywhere from, I've actually found a company online where they will, in bulk runs, produce them quite cost effectively. They come out to like $100 a piece. However, local companies have quoted me upwards to $750 to make a single one of these, based on the material requirements and the cutout requirements. And that also did include in that drilling and tapping, where they need to be precise with these holes. So I think taking that out probably would have removed about $200, maybe a few more dollars. That's probably about as good as it gets on a small local production. It's just labor intensive if you're just building one of these. So probably best to get a couple, and it wouldn't hurt. All right, put that back away. And we can go back to this. So now that we've talked about what actually caused that problem, let's talk about the solution. I did a pull and a reflow. So I actually physically removed this chip from the board. As you can see, there's a bit of dark color here. In fact, let's pull the scope over to it. And that's going to get in the way, but that's okay, because we're going to switch views. We're going to go to scope only, because it's pretty much obstructing all of our other view. And we're going to raise this up. Alright. So we actually had to reflow this once to the point where it got hot enough where we could lift that chip up and off of the board because it is direct mounted. So again, don't try that at home. It requires specialty tools. If you get to the stage where you need to have that done, you need to seek the help of a professional. However, if you want to try it, it's your board. You're able to do whatever you want with it. So in this case, that is what solved this problem. Lifting that, removing it, I probably could have reballed it and put it back down because we know that that chip was good before the break, but just to be safe rather than sorry and have to do the labor all over again, I went ahead and replaced it with a known good chip. We reballed that chip and then put that chip back down. Because this is something I consider was a part of the repair that is just par for the course. It's something that happens, but it also could have been a bit of negligence from the side of doing that teardown of this particular Ethernet port. If one of those pieces, like I said, got up under there and caused those pieces to bridge, that's something that obviously we want to take care of and not burden onto the customer. Even if it had just been from normal heat where thermal expansion is something, that is where we cover it. We're not going to bill separately for that. So this was done on the house, not a part of the customer's initial repair, but it is something that we will be covering for them should we have any defects in our reball process. Then this piece is now covered under that Ethernet controller. So the customer is actually better off with this swap out because now we've got a chip that we know doesn't have any electrical stress from that surge event because all of these devices are interconnected, and it should give them a very long-term solution because now we've switched over to a leaded solder base from the lead-free. As far as APU and other components go, we haven't switched those out, but for that south bridge, they're now on a lead-free setup, which anyone that knows lead-free versus leaded, a leaded solution has a much tighter, stronger bond than a lead-free joint. Lead-free tends to get more brittle more easily, but because of compliance, it is what manufacturers are going to use, and it is the de facto standard. So it's not that the manufacturer did anything wrong. It's not that they're using cheap components. In fact, it's more expensive for them to do lead-free and requires an even higher level of precision in terms of installation. It is just what is required by safety standards, not only from just removing lead in products, but think about the workers that are there in these factories. When you're heating up lead, in a factory environment like that, you would either have to have them in some serious protection gear, and they're still in that anyway, but it's just one more thing that they've got to be worried about in terms of protecting their employees for. To get back on topic, and so that we don't take too long with this video here, I think we've thoroughly addressed what the cause of that previous failure was, and that it has now been fixed. So we're going to now go back to our other view, and you can see here, and again, this is, before we go, I just want to show so nobody's like, oh, this board is dirty. No, this is no clean flux, and I've mentioned many times before that as long as it has been heated, and usually it takes a reflow process to get it there, to the point where it's not gooey, it's not sticky, it's dry and crystallized, then you do not have to clean it any further. And that is what we've achieved here. We don't need to clean further than this. What we will do before we switch back to the other view, just to go ahead and make it a little bit better, is we're going to, I was trying to get more of that chip in view there. We're going to take some isopropyl. We're going to dab it on the cotton swab, not all over the chip, at least just not for this one because we don't want to overdo it. But we're going to clean this up because we got a little bit of gunk on top of that, and it's not going to hurt it, but the chip is one thing I like to have clean because these are connections up here. These are, to be honest, I'm not sure. I think this is probably some type of an resistor array, trying to mush those words, and then these are capacitors. very, very small units. I think that might be slightly smaller than a 0402 package. Probably a, what's that, maybe a 0812 or 1208. I think it's 1208 is how that number goes. Alright, so we've cleaned that off. We're now going to dry this here. And we're just going to rub it till it gets a shine, kind of polishing the surface. That's how we know that it's clean and free of any debris. We're then going to take our thermal paste, and we don't want to get that garbage that we got off Amazon, which was sold by some seller. And I'm going to readdress that. I'm not saying that Amazon sells garbage, but I do think that they like to hide a little bit behind the fact that they are just the distributor, because they know a lot of these products in their carts are counterfeit, and they're not doing their due diligence in removing those parts from their marketplace, simply because most people won't know the difference and they will sell. And if a person's not complaining and they're happy, perception is value, and it's additional revenue for Amazon. And this is just my theory. It's an opinion. It's not a fact. I can't speak to the minds of their upper management and owners, but it's hard to refute one's opinion when it goes on over and over and over again. I will say that when you use the word counterfeit with them, they were very proactive. I got a refund almost immediately. They told me I could just keep the item, which would normally mean throw it away because I would never use this. However, I used it in the videos to demonstrate how much of garbage this stuff was. And again, this is not Arctic silver. This is a fake, and it is not what we used. We used, and again, this is also what I put down as not MX4 thermal compound. I just used that too because I'm cheap and didn't want to buy a new one just to put my own compound in, and the one the manufacturers gave me I threw away. But this is Heatsink, something. It's a Chinese company whose name I can't pronounce and probably butchered, but it's good stuff. I would like to get some of the, and I say I don't often but today I seem to be on top of it. I would like to get some true authentic Arctic Silver 5, but finding a valid source is so hard, and dealing with the manufacturer has not been the most convenient. But I do now have that contact, and eventually we'll go ahead and chomp down on a nice big bulk order so that I can order from them directly. Once we've done this and we put that thermal paste on, do realize that, and we should probably show this here so that people understand, this is not a lot. That is the fine point of tweezers. We're just doing a pea-size amount, and that's probably the best way to describe it. Somebody else described it that way. I just continue using it because it's an accurate statement of the size and portion that is being used. We want to go through now and do the laydown, which actually requires us, and I guess probably in hindsight should have done this first. So we're going to move this over to a safe spot. And again, I will re-verify that that board is the same board that it has been, just to show that there's no magic tricks going on. This is just unadulterated raw video. Clean up some of this dust. Alright, so now that we've done that, we can bring our board back, and we are still on microscope. So let's go Logic Big only. There we are. So we cleaned up this. That's what I went and grabbed and swapped out with the board, and it had the paste from the other side on top of, this is the heatsink. So this metal pad here has copper conductors underneath it that then radiate that heat to fins. In a previous video, we cleaned those fins off because they did have a bit of buildup on them. And we also have one more pad to stick on this underside here. We're going to clean that off because it got a little dirty. These don't need to be perfect. They don't need to have like gobs of dirt or anything on them. And if you have one that's torn up, like it's split when you tried to remove it, then that needs to be removed and replaced. Don't put torn thermal pads back on your RAM. That is probably the time when I recommend just swap it out for another one. And these can be obtained cheaply. If you want to buy the brand same as what the manufacturer uses, then you're going to pay, because as I've said before, they mark up their price just so that they can mark it down for large corporate buyers, because they never want to pay full price for anything. So the consumer price gets jacked up so that they can show their nice, pretty discounted price to the manufacturer. If you are looking for a similar quality to the brand, then you would probably want to go with the same company who produces this. They have on Amazon, I believe you can buy it. You can also find it at other various vendors, but Arctic, not the same as Arctic Silver, but Arctic makes the MX4 thermal compound, also makes a thermally conductive sheet. They are not pre-sliced. You will have to slice them yourself. That sheet costs about $7 to $15. Whether shipping is included or not varies for that price. And then with that, you know you're getting good quality from a trusted manufacturer, but you do pay a bit of a premium to it. If you buy some of the other standards from overseas, which are still good enough for the purpose that this has, they may not conduct quite as much heat, but the RAM is not getting as hot as your CPU. But you can pay a couple of bucks for a sheet of 100 of those, and that will last you quite a while. So what we're doing now is we're going to put this on. And remember, we're using pressure when we apply this down on top, and that's what's going to squeeze our thermal paste down to where it needs to go and spread it out. Now, in the instructions for all thermal paste, it will tell you that there's a ramp-up cycling that has to be done, kind of like how you wouldn't want to run and gun a car before you cycle it all the way. You know, you want to give it a time to kind of lube itself up, get greased up. Had to shut the door there. And then we want to put on the rest of these pads, wherever the heck they disappeared to. I think I moved stuff around. When I was looking for that screwdriver. When I was looking for that screwdriver, again, trying to remove these ums that I'm having today. For those of you that don't like hearing them, I get you. I am driven crazy by ums. However, sometimes I don't know why, it just sinks into your skin and crawls out through your mouth, I guess. Okay, so here's a great example of what we're going to do. So some of these thermal pads have ran away on me. In fact, I just found another one. When I was moving stuff around, I knocked them over looking for that screwdriver. Well, isopropyl, if they have any debris on them, will make these nice and clean, really quick and easy. Which is probably what I should have done the other times. So basically they get a little tacky, I guess, whatever oils are in them, as it kind of wants to seep out. It'll fight you there. We're not going to look for any more of these. As I say that, I'm looking for more of them. What we're going to do now is pull out the sheet. Make sure we have, they are different sizes, and that is a little thin. That is actually the right size here. So these are a little wider, but they're going to get the job done. In fact, they'll have even better coverage across the surface. Oh, we actually already had one that was on there. And these are inexpensive enough that I'm not even going to bother putting it back into its little package. Okay, so now we want to line this up. It's actually better to put these pads on the RAM chip so that they don't fall off as you're laying it down. But what we're going to do is we're going to check and make sure, no, that's not happened. So I just visually inspected that it was adhering while it was in the upside down position, and it did. So now that's been done. I want to move this back a little bit so that you can see everything that's going to take place as we strap all this back together. Now, you can do this many different ways. Oh, did I verify? Let's do that as well. Okay, I'm not lifting this. I'm sure that in some part of this video you could rewind and show or see on the other side that the ticket number and the partial name is still the same. If you can't see that, then I'm sorry. Proving that it is the same is not worth enough to me to open that back up. Strip off the thermal paste, and then reapplying new thermal paste. We got through it. Like I said, this is live, so when steps get skipped, as long as it's not a critical step that I have to go back to, if it's just showing and demonstrating something, I'm sorry, we'll catch it on the next one. What I have found, and again, it's probably I need to, and this is where editing, I think, becomes important, because I'm sure nobody likes watching really, really long technical videos. It could probably get pretty boring. Unfortunately, either I talk too much, or just talking and doing these is always going to be slow. But I'm trying to keep these videos as short as possible, but they do get long. And I don't know why I did that, but that's okay because we only did one of them. This one actually will not go in. So what we did is we put in our security screws, which use the Torque T8 security driver, our security bit, and we put in around the perimeter. And there are arrows that point to all of these, so you know which one receives screws and which ones don't. And then we got one that we missed, which goes right here. And most of the time I do like to do this one first, but to be honest, it's not mission critical to put it on first. In fact, who knows? In terms of an even spread, it may be beneficial to not put it on first, because now our plate is kind of locked down in the position that it needs to be. And what we will continue to keep the same is we don't want to all the way torque one of these. I like to get it to the point where press down, it starts to give a little bit of pressure. And then we want to follow up with this other side and bring it into a kind of tension state, and we're not going to torque that one all the way down either. We're going to kind of go back and forth so that we get a nice even amount of tension. And this may not be necessary, but in my mind it makes it better. So as long as it convinces me that it's for the better, I'm going to continue to do it. Whether or not you do is up to you. Hard drive goes back in, and now I tested this earlier to confirm that all our fixes were good, so we should still have the right hard drive in there, but I did not mark this one, so we could have a mix-up, because when I was putting all this together, I think I had 3 of them on the desk. But the great thing is that if we turn it on and we get an error, we know that our hard drive is needing to be swapped out with one of the other ones. So it kind of gives us an alert that something isn't right. What we're going to do now is plug back in our connections, which go here. And with this cable, there's a routing to it where you can kind of see it comes up from the top here, and this is your Wi-Fi antenna. It goes down, it goes underneath a little latch behind this little wire cable. In fact, here's the wire cable sticking out, and we want to tuck that in under that same latch, and then it comes around, and there's 2 little tangs here. And you got one that's small and one that's wide, and you're just going to wrap it around those like an S, backwards S. Nope. Yes, backwards S. I don't know why my brain kind of went numb there on which way an S is supposed to go. So a backwards S, and then it attaches in. And you need to make sure it's fully clipped, otherwise you're going to have some issues. Once we've got that done, we take our power supply. We're going to insert that in. To make this easy with button presses, we're going to apply it this way. First thing I'm going to do is check this against a reference screen to ensure that we don't have content protection enabled, which would block us from getting the signal, as well as ensure that it is reading as it should. Now before, what we actually got was we'd get a blue light, it would beep, and it would turn off. A lot of times I get people that call me and say, oh, my machine does this, and they describe that issue exactly. Blue light's on, beeps, turns off. And you know what they tell me? I went on YouTube, and I know that it just needs a power supply. What they really mean is that they don't value the service you provide and that they want you to do it for almost dirt nothing. In fact, maybe I should even pay them for it. I get that you went on YouTube and that you looked at that solution, but when someone tells you that that may not be the case, that it's not the power supply more often than not, and then you argue with them about it, it's kind of insulting. So here's the proof. Right there, if you go back to the previous videos, this issue occurred exactly as other videos describe and go, oh, you just need a power supply. I don't know who came up with that solution. In some cases, I would say that can be true. But more often than not, that instant off with the beep is usually something other than the power supply. And maybe I would have to go back and look through tickets. Maybe it is a fair amount of times. It is, in fact, I got screen on and I got sidetracked and wasn't paying attention. We need to sync up a controller. Maybe a fair amount of times it is also a power supply issue. So I get it when you're trying to advocate your opinion. But when somebody tells you that that's not the case and you need to bring it in to have it looked at, hear them out. Bring it in. Let a professional take a look. Or if you believe it's the power supply, then go ahead and replace it. But what a technician shop won't do, and what a good technician shop shouldn't do, is go, oh, okay, you said it's the power supply, so we'll just replace it. We should do diagnostic first. We should determine if that is truly the issue, and if it is, then make that repair. But if it's not the issue, we're going to give you exactly what it is that's wrong with your machine and tell you how to go about fixing it. Now you can possibly now hear the sound coming out of that device, knowing that it is in fact functioning. I've got my phone going off on me. I just want to make sure this isn't a customer that is on the way to pick up, and in fact it is. In fact, it's this customer on the way to pick up, which is where I was supposed to have this done today by 1, and I got pulled away last night, but I really wanted to make this video before I delivered it, so we are almost done here. Let's just go into the settings so that we can make sure HDCP is off. Notifications. System, we go to system, and we're going to, it was on, so it would not have worked with that on, and we are going to discontinue that. Now we will re-enable it for the customer, otherwise he may find that he's having issues running Netflix and other media apps that a lot of people like to use. But what we're going to do now and before we do that, so that we don't put any of this person's data up, we're going to switch over here. And it just switched to the camera. You can see that we're still there on the board. Now I plugged in that HDMI into the splitter, and we have enabled that HDCP set to off, which you can't really see. If you watched the last video, you will have seen that I threw up this little kind of blanket image to cover up the person's name, just to ensure that they have privacy there. So now that's been done, you can no longer see it, but this machine is fully functioning. We have Ethernet, we have Wi-Fi, we have it all on this machine, and the customer can now get it back and have a happy, fully functioning machine to play games on. Alright, so other than that, that is it for this repair. If you like this video, if you learned something from it, feel free to go ahead and hit the like, hit the subscribe button. If there's something you would like to see or a question you need to ask, go ahead and feel free to put that into the comments. There will be more videos to come. Not sure if we're going to do another one today, but certainly throughout the week, and as time moves forward, we will have lots of videos coming to this channel on different repairs. Right now, we seem to be PS4 heavy, but there are tons of solutions that we could go non-stop on with this. But I'm going to try to mix it up and put some of the other repairs that come through in, and also try to be conscientious to not find some of those really long, grueling repairs that just have you stuck to your screen all day. We all got to be productive. So I'm sure that not everybody wants to spend a good chunk of their life watching repair videos. But like I said, if you learned something from it, if you liked or enjoyed this video or want to see something else, let us know. Hit that subscribe button or throw a comment into the box, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.